Well, there we go. Daytona 500 is finally complete. And I say finally because, be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of plate racing. But how about it? A a nice change, I guess you could say, from the last couple of races that we have seen with the 500 the past couple of years. Yeah, there was the common silliness that we did see throughout the end of the event, but I think we can be pretty confident in saying that it was actually a pretty entertaining race. It was kind of back and forth throughout it. There was some train, but there wasn't a whole lot of it, and I think we'll take that for sure. It is pretty evident that NASCAR's really been pushing for this new car. They've been pushing for change. They've been pushing for a lot, and the fact that we were able to get a rookie winner out in his first second Daytona 500 start. It was definitely very interesting to see that Austin Cindric comes away with the race victory. Cam K for you guys here on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast live stream right now. We're just chatting about the Daytona 500, and it was a very, I would say it was kind of an odd race. That there was definitely some of the stupidness that we've seen in the past, and unfortunately, stupidness from what we've seen previously. There's unfortunately been a lot of drivers that have, well, they've made the same mistake time in and time out, unfortunately, and it is Brad Keselowski. That there's no way around it. He was nuts in this race again, and obviously we've seen him in the past. Brad has, he's done this before. We've seen him act a little crazy when it comes to pushing, and it was no different this time around. Brad Keselowski obviously did have a very fast car, but at the end of the day, once again, his pushes were a little too extreme, ended up taking out Ricky Stenhouse Jr. along with his teammate, took out a lot of really strong cars at the beginning of the race. Actually, Denny Hamlin was involved in the first wreck with William Byron and Harrison Burton. And it's so interesting because what I like about this race was that after that happened, it was like a whole bunch of different contenders came in. Then once again, we had a whole bunch that kind of came in, and it was nice because there's back and forth. Towards the end, it kind of felt, I kind of feel like, I kind of felt as if we were going to see a little bit more of that stupidness towards the end. It got a little bit crazy, but at least that final lap was relatively okay. We didn't have anybody do a stupid move like what we've seen in the past with turning people to the right into the wall. We didn't see any of that, which is obviously much better than what the obvious would be. Is we don't need another Ryan Newman accident. We don't need another Carl Edwards wreck. But after 500 miles, we can say that Austin Cindric won this race. Obviously, there's some people that got at least one person on Twitter not very happy with him winning this race. Obviously, Penske coming out there, Penske seemed to be the best car all week. And what's really great is that we actually got to see it was essentially two rookies 2 days in a row that won their respective races. We saw a rookie in Austin Hill win the Xfinity race, and we saw today a rookie win the race. Now, obviously, Austin Cindric is not a rookie in this race. He has run it before, twice before, in fact. But, it starts off the season well, and it gets somebody new in the playoffs, and that's what they wanted. Now, if we take a look at the overall event itself, it went pretty well as I kind of expected, but I will say that the new car and the paint schemes really didn't make much of a difference. I felt that the paint schemes really didn't didn't make a huge difference. I don't really notice them. Obviously, a big wreck early in the race, and it took out uh, four contenders right off the bat. Ross Chastain, Harrison Burton. Chastain ends up finishing last. Harrison Burton rolls, and unfortunately, with that roll, took himself out of the race. William Byron. William had gone for a very, very long slide and unfortunately was not able to save it. Denny Hamlin didn't look as if he really damaged the car, but did get hit right at the suspension and it broke the suspension. Excuse me. And Greg Biffle, unfortunately, no coverage really in the race with NY Racing and didn't really show what happened to him. They didn't talk about what happened to him. Tyler Reddick had a mechanical failure and it knocked him out of the race. It took out Christopher Bell, Todd Gillen, Kyle Larson was involved in a huge wreck. Noah Gregson, Kevin Harvick, and then we have Eric Jones, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. were the last two involved in giant wrecks. We were, however, able to get cars running at the end of the race. And it looks like after all of that, we did have 27 cars finish the race, which is actually very impressive for the Daytona 500. We haven't had many cars finish the last couple of years. So BJ McLeod ends up finishing the race in 27th place. Kaz Grala and the money team finish in 26th. Austin Dillon. Now, I didn't see the damage when Austin got that specific damage, but it put him behind the eight ball and they were not even close to competitive. And unfortunate for RCR, they had a really bad day. They were thought to be one of the cars that would be very, very strong. And unfortunately, it wasn't the case. Alex Bowman caught up in wreck early. Was very noticeable is that if you got a little bit of damage, it didn't seem as if cars were able to get back into the race as if we would have seen in the past, which I do appreciate. I think that will help. Same with the mechanical failures. People are going to crap all over the mechanical failures, but believe me, that you need that in racing. You have to have that. You know, it does help the parity. I understand that people like to have the strongest guys be the strongest guys, but at the end of the day, if you can have a race that has a little bit of everything, it does make it a little more exciting. Justin Haley was one of those guys that did have a mechanical failure. First off the bat, it's the wheels, and those are going to be the problem for these teams. And I threw it out to Mark Urban on social media because I'm not 100% sure, but these cars with the single lug, the wheels are very similar to the V8 supercars. And if you look at the V8 supercars, sometimes if they just bump side-to-side contact, it can do enough to break the suspension. So it might be the same here, where if you get into somebody, it could break your suspension lickety split. And that's what somebody else had posted on Twitter and said, that's going to be very worrisome. Ryan Goodrum, I think it was he's very worried about the road courses. And that would be a place where side-to-side contact can happen. But that's where you've got to be a smart driver. You've got to do it without as much contact as possible. Jacques Villeneuve, in making the race starting last, finishes in 22nd place. Yeah, he wasn't competitive. He didn't have a fast car, but he was up in the draft for a little bit. Everybody kind of was expecting Jacques to do something Jacques-like, but he didn't. Tyler Reddick's car broke in front of him, and then he made contact with the 8 car. So there wasn't a evident mistake out there from our good boy Jacques, our F1 champion. Joey Logano was fuming by the end of this race because his car was stuck in the basically with flat tires. And that's what we've kind of seen is that these cars don't move very well with flat tires. They can't. They essentially can't when they do have a flat tire, they're stuck. So it might be something that they're going to have to work on. I would definitely think that for the future, they're going to need to. Cole Custer, not a factor the entire day. He got lapped on speed. I don't know if he had gotten damage. I think they had mentioned that he had some sort of an issue going on with his car. Kurt Busch, 19th, he was involved in several incidents. And then the last car one lap down, first car one lap down, let me apologize for that. Daniel Suarez, who had something happen to him on track and Fox never caught it. So we have no idea. I have no idea what happened. People were saying that he blew up. Clearly he didn't if he finished the race. Now, how about this? Cody Ware in the 51 Ford for Rick Ware Racing finishes 17th and on the lead lap. Great job for Cody Ware and that whole team. That's huge. They actually have a better result ahead of Cody Ware. We'll get to in a little bit. Chris Buescher, not indicative of where he ran, 16th place. He was very fast. Landon Castle for Spire Motorsports, 15th, and Corey LaJoie for Spire Motorsports in 14th. Pretty good finishes for both of those guys. And I apologize again. It was not on the lead lap for Cody Ware. He was one lap down him and Chris Buescher was because they ended up going overtime. Okay, Martin Truex Jr., who I shocked he was actually able to finish the race with the amount of damage he had, 13th place. Daniel Hemrick, after having a penalty because his car failed inspection 3 times, Daniel Hemrick comes back and finishes 12th place. Amazing job for him and that Cowlick team. Never give up on them. Better result than the 31, so I think they'll take that. Ty Dillon in the number 42 for Petty GMS. He's going to carry the banner for them. Unfortunately, Eric Jones was up in the front and got caught up in that wreck. And Ty really was quiet the whole race. He was up in the top 15, top 20, but didn't really make any moves to be any much higher than he was there. Chase Elliott in 10th after being involved in several incidents. Brad Keselowski, the most controversial man outside of the Daytona 500 storyline of who won. It'll be what Brad Keselowski was like on track. He finishes in 9th place after a very strong car. And David Reagan for Rick Ware Racing, 8th place in the Daytona 500. Absolutely fantastic. Michael McDowell, last year's winner, comes home to finish 7th. Unfortunately, wrecked race cars for both of those guys. Kyle Busch, once again in his 17th Daytona 500, will come up a little bit short in 16th place. Eric Almirola in his final full-time season will finish in 5th. Ryan Blaney, he was close. Bubba was pushing him, but he had nowhere to go, unfortunately, will finish in 4th place. And how about Chase Briscoe? A very wild start to his race after being spun. He will come back and finish in 3rd place. Bubba Wallace, my guy, so happy for him in the 2311 team. Up there, led 12 laps, was really, really good and very consistent the whole race long. He worked amazing with Kyle Busch and very patient. And I think that was very indicative. He wasn't so frantic on the track today, which I think is indicative of his relationship with Freddie Kraft. Definitely very, very improved in his running on the plate races. And Austin Cindric, he led 21 laps in this race today. The 2 car was definitely one of the strongest out there. And towards the end, it kind of felt as if this was going to be a Penske race victory. So coming out of the 2022 Daytona 500, there is definitely a lot that we could see here. Jeremy C was hoping Blaney could have gotten it. Who did you have? I had Kyle Busch, man. I was hoping Kyle would pull it off, but he did the best job of avoiding wrecks. I think they didn't really comment so much on everybody that was missing wrecks. They like to talk about David Reagan, but Kyle Busch missed plenty of them as well. Brent Purcell, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. I might have missed it, and I see you are going over the finish order. How do you feel about the new car did overall? I was worried about after the duels, they spread out too. I wish Bubba had 100 more yards, man. I was going to lose my mind if Bubba Wallace won this race. Especially that 23 car McDonald's. That's a beautiful looking car. I love the way it looks. Brent, I agree with you. I was very skeptical on how this race would go, especially because of the duels. But we have to remember one thing is that these guys, the duels didn't really need to happen this year. The drivers were not going to be as racy because there's parts shortages. The cars, they're worried about that. And we have an interview with a crew member from Stewart Haas Racing, the associate foreman Brian Murphy, and he clarified for us that, yeah, that is a legit thing. They do not have the parts that they need. So yeah, teams are definitely worried about it. And I was worried after the duels. I thought, I cannot stand seeing another year of a train around Daytona. I can't. This year was much better. I thought the race overall was extremely entertaining. Sidebar from that is the absolutely horrible job that Fox did this entire race, this entire weekend. I don't know what's gone on over there, but it is getting embarrassing. With the amount of commercials, the real lack of racing that we actually got to see in this event. Like it's been like this before. It's bad. Like, don't get me wrong. It's been bad in the past. Yeah, Brent, it was awful. That's the only word you can use. Awful. It's been like we've seen bad stuff before. We have. Fox is like this every year, but I cannot remember the amount of commercials that they had in this race. Ruined it. It ruined it because it seemed like they finally got into a groove. There was excitement, and then they would go to a break, or they'd put that stupid Fox, the Busch commercial on. Don't get me wrong. I love what they're doing, but you're interrupting the race again and again and again. They constantly missed the flyover. I don't remember a year where they actually missed the flyover for the 500. And it was actually really nice. It's indicative that today, Fox was, it was the worst. They didn't stay focused at all. I understand that in this day and age, it is hard to get people to tune in. That's true. But this does not help. I don't want to watch a race and tune in for commercials for 4 hours. It was awful. Yes, I was going to get to that, Brent. They don't know what they're looking at anymore. When you go back to the early 2000s of NASCAR on Fox, it was great. Excellent. Always focused. They had excellent direction. They had real good commitment. It felt like they cared about presenting a fantastic product. But holy shit, was this awful. Awful. And I don't like to be the negative Nancy here. I don't like to be the negative Ned. I think as a race fan, racing in general is I'm excited for it. I love seeing motorsports. That's what I live and I die for. But holy crap, you cannot expect to keep an audience in 2022 if you go to commercial every, not even 5 minutes. And then you come back from a commercial, you stay for 2 laps, and then you go back for another commercial. They're talking about how they're trying to expand the audience. Well, there's a whole generation of young race fans, young people now that, I'm saying young people as a 30-year-old, but listen, I have a point here. All they've known is streaming. They've known countless material at the tip, at their fingertips, and they don't have to wait for it. They have season-long series. They have a whole season released at one time, and they can watch it with no commercials at all. They have to fix this. In 2022, you have streaming platforms. How many different streaming platforms are there? People are going to want to watch something where they don't have to watch commercials. Fireman Stage 56, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Why did they let Team RFK and Penske keep their starting position since they seized the tires and wheels? Because that they've been seized, but there's no penalty yet. They haven't deemed anything necessary yet for penalization. That will come in the following week. Now, if they decide tonight that Cindric's car fails post-race inspection, then yeah, he'll probably lose the race win. But we've known them to NASCAR to make exceptions for the championship, for the 500. Can't imagine that they're going to do that. I hate to say it, that's what they would do that, but we've known that. Brent, and we missed like 2 or 3 pit cycles at that. They missed They missed so much when they went to breaks. And this was it's been like this all week for the Xfinity race, for the duels, for the truck race, for the Xfinity race. They missed so much because they took so many commercial breaks. It's not like hockey. It's not like basketball where they actually have TV timeouts. They have a specialized time where they can go to a commercial and nothing is going to happen. You don't see it. You don't see it in other sports where they go to commercial, a full-scale commercial, and you can't see what's happening during that game. So if that was their temperament, do you think that's why he put it where he did and burn the right? Well, hard to say. Yeah, I wouldn't know, man. I wouldn't say that would be the case. I think that overall, we were talking with some crew members about this, and they basically said everybody's gonna have to find a new way to cheat because everybody got used to the old way of doing it. Now they don't have that ability to do that. They have to kind of just figure it out. So yeah, overall, Fox sucked. Absolutely god awful direction, placement, the camera angles. I will give them credit. I like that they have that new graphic package with the numbers on the side, but to me, they still belong scrolling on the top. I don't like anything in my view. I want the full panoramic. You can take something off the top. Like clearly it's not good. Their side-by-side commercials are not good enough for sure. You're right. Absolutely right. I understand that that's an option for them. But again, what other sport do they do that? What else do they do that? They don't. Hockey has a TV timeout. So they're in a bad position. They have no way that they can, because I wouldn't be shocked if NASCAR would be like, okay, well, we're going to have a stage break, so now we're going to fit 15 minutes of commercials in for you if they were to do that. But it's not unheard of. We've seen it. The V8 supercars and the in Formula One on Sky Sports, they don't have commercials during the race because it's a sporting event. You're breaking up the viewing for that. And I think that's a great way to lose people, because when I'm watching the race, if they constantly are a commercial, I'm like, what am I watching? I'm watching 15 commercials. I can't even tell you. I mean, there's normally a breakdown. You guys definitely find it on social media. There's normally a breakdown of how much commercial time there was compared to the race time. It's not good. You're trying to build a better racing fan base, and you can't build it if no one is actually watching the product. Now, I will say it did somewhat work for wanting to go to the actual racetrack, because after seeing this, I'm like, I got to go to the 500 myself. I don't want to be sitting there for hours and hours and hours watching 15 commercials, 20 commercials, commercials after commercial after commercial. And not only that's the same commercials too. You know, up in Canada, we have a really, really tough deal for the truck races because we have to deal with Fox Sports Racing that's running 11-year-old commercials, the same 11-year-old commercials that they've been running for the past 11 years, because they're not Fox. I believe it was told to me that Fox is not allowed to run specific programming commercials in Canada, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, but there's some sort of a reason for it. Now, if we head to 2022's regular season here, Austin Cindric now has a win. Obviously, that takes a spot away from somebody in the playoffs. To me, I think that this new car, this wasn't the test. Daytona, Talladega, this is not the test. This is the first race of the season, right? We need to see something way more interesting. We need to go and see next week in California. Then we need to go see Las Vegas. We need to go see a short track. You see how these cars are actually going to work outside of a plate race. I don't think you're going to see as much it's hard to say because plate racing is not as much dependent on the car itself. It's who you're working with. It's being in the draft. You don't have that all the time. I wouldn't go to a super speedway to watch a race, maybe to party. Yeah, well, a party is a good thing. You see the cars go by and have to wait for 2 minutes to see them again for sets. True, but Fireman Stage 56, road courses are worse because you can't see them. At least if you're a Daytona, if you're up high, you can see the whole track. At least for the most part, I believe. You can't see it at a road course. I mean, we were at CTMP last year of the Penny Series, and we were sitting in one corner, and they go by, and then you can't see them. You don't see at all because they don't have screens out of those tracks. Brent, the cars look durable, so I look forward to seeing more short tracks. I thought that they did seem a lot more durable, even with the flyover that we saw, the blowover that we saw for. Oh, my light went out. Hold on a second. That we saw Harrison Burton, and I'm really bummed for him. He looked really good. Harrison Burton did, and I'm actually a really big fan of him. All of the Burtons, really, I've always kind of really been a fan of them. And I go back, man, guys. The first Daytona 500 I watched was in 2002, and it was his Uncle Ward winning the 500, and Bill Davis Racing's 22, and yeah, I would definitely. I'm a big fan of the Burtons, and Harrison seems like a good kid, and definite potential there. Unfortunately, though, being involved in that, what I will say, you say that they're durable, though, guys, but what was also noticeable is there's the pieces on them that aren't as durable. The bodies look very durable, but the suspension pieces, the wheels, those aren't. And that's what I really think is going to be very interesting this season. And I think it will be fun to see it, because if you go and you watch the V8 supercars, and I mentioned that earlier in the broadcast, they can't take a lot of damage. They can't, because it will break their suspension. That's exactly what it seemed like happened in this race. So you got to race smarter. You got to race not bumping into each other. And I want to see that in my racing. I want to see more mechanical failures. And I know that might sound crazy and ludicrous, but you go back years and years ago, and you used to have that. You used to have engine failures. Remember, we go way back to 2002, Talladega, the fall race, and every single Hendrick Motorsports experienced, every single Hendrick Power car experienced an engine failure. They all failed to make the race. Shit like that, it makes a race more interesting. As much as it sucks to see mechanical and parts failures, it does help. Davey Sides, next gen cars got loose when bump drafting. Also, please give a shout out to my girlfriend, Breland. I'm so sorry, Breland. Thank you for putting the proper pronunciation, Davey. I appreciate that. Breland. Parts like wheel are easier to fix via a bumper ripping off out for a minor hit. Yes. And if you go back, watch Harrison Burton's flip again. What I really noticed was the main chassis. Okay, you have all the other side pieces, the body work, yeah, that would get damaged, but the chassis itself, nothing bent. When he flipped over, it didn't cave. And that was very, very, very good to see, because we saw, if you go back and watch Newman's hit, obviously a little bit harder of an impact, the top of the car being hit by another car obviously will help cave it in, but it looked like it was extremely strong, extremely durable. Fireman Sage looks reminiscent to when Junior took all that damage to the car and still won. They are still competitive at restrict. Yeah, but it depends though, because Sage, Bowman and Christopher Bell and who's the other one? Austin Dillon. I didn't see what happened to Austin Dillon, but Austin Dillon took some damage and was completely taken out of this. Whereas Kyle Busch had damage, but could still be in the lead draft. So it almost depends, like it's a certain type of damage that they can take. If they can't, and which is, again, that's what makes this interesting. It makes it more fun because it's a different variable. It's something they didn't have to deal with before. That's what you want to see in motorsports. Like, I don't want to see everything be the exact same as it has been for the past 20 years. I've dealt with that already. Ever since I've been watching NASCAR, it's been the exact same. This feels much more different than it ever has. And I'm really glad to see that. I think having that parity, there was a time in the race where we had front row, Roush, Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske, and I believe JTG all in the top 10. It's what we need to see. Parity is good for racing. Now, I was of that generation. I started watching in 2002, right when Jimmy Johnson started in the NASCAR Cup Series. And I had to be a NASCAR fan through his 7 years of domination. And that was very difficult to make it through. As much as people love Jimmy Johnson, and I'm a fan of him now, I was not a fan back then because it was the same old stuff. And that after a while, you lose an audience. I think what's been very noticeable is in certain other sports, and you have to take some comparisons to other sports here because there is a truth to it, and that is Major League Baseball and the NFL and the NHL all have ways to kind of rebuild the rosters, and then the teams come back and win whatever it is after being crap for years. In Major League Baseball, we'll take it for example. Major League Baseball, how many years were the Cubs and the Astros complete shit? The Braves complete shit. And all of those teams have been able to rebuild, and then they win the World Series. That's what we need to see here, is teams be able to come back, change everything like we're seeing with RFK this year. That's something that's been missing from this series. I also think a lot of bugs to work out with the next generation, like the wheels and the Darren flaps. I agree that it does feel different. You can tell that from the excitement. It does. It does. It feels, look how packed. I have not seen the Daytona 500 so packed before. It seems like it wasn't to that point for the long time. I wouldn't say that they killed the sport, but I think they really hurt it. And unfortunately, again, Fireman Sage, it's the same thing. When you have the same people dominating, they should have changed the schedule. They should have made changes when the domination was happening. I understand that it's records and it's some of the coolest things ever. But the problem is you lose a lot of people because there's no interest. It's the exact same. I think why Formula One had such a hard time for so many years is because it was always the same people that won all the time. Now it's also getting a huge revival. And it, like in Canada, it was like this, I believe it was one of the most watched sports in Canada last year. And that's never been the case. I gotta stop hitting this, turning my light off. And I agree with you, Fireman Sage. Awesome that you're a fireman too. My dad is an ex-fireman. So I definitely want to thank you for what you do. My dad was in the Toronto Fire Department for 31 years, or 30 years. I think it was 31. Oh, I could be wrong. He's been retired for a long time now, but absolutely love you guys for what you guys do. And thank you for doing everything throughout all of this awful past couple of years. And we're almost through it. So, but yeah, the racing it's totally being revived. And I will say something further to that point, Fireman Stages. Look at the car counts. Look at the car counts that we got at Daytona this past week. You know, it is fantastic to see that. I get that heart problems. Totally cool, man. But I appreciate for what you did. Thank you for your service, my friend. Really, really appreciate it. But okay, 47 cars for the Xfinity Series. What is it? 42 trucks and 42 for the Cup Series. Now, on top of that, you have an IndyCar field that might be the biggest it's been since the kart years. You have them that have the Indy ladder, which is completely full with every one of the developmental series in IndyCar this year is going to have over 15 cars, or at least 15 cars, which it hasn't seen for years. Formula One, once again, has the biggest numbers that it's ever seen. And then we've got in our like our local series, the Pinty series, there is talk that we're going to see 20 full-time cars in our series, which we haven't seen ever. I mean, 2007, when NASCAR bought the CASCAR series, that was a most competitive and busy season. We haven't seen anything like that. So as much as awfulness kind of COVID was, it has kind of brought everything down level, and it seems like it's kind of saved maybe those budgets up, and people are really getting into racing again. And that's what we need, man. We need this. We need to go back and find, I want to go around and see die-cast cars like this again. I want to go out and be able to go to my local store and be like, I'm looking for a cast car, or I'm looking for NASCAR. It's right here. Something like that. Brent Purcell, there's real energy coming into the year. Absolutely. 100%. There definitely is. Davey Sides, not much action from Suarez in the 500. I know it's a big presence from Trackhouse in qualifying the duels, not the 500. They were exceptionally quiet. Trackhouse was. Now, obviously, it hurts that Chastain was taken out so early. I would have liked to see what Ross can do, because he's somebody I think that is still very underrated, as is Daniel Suarez. I think Gibbs gave up on him way too quickly. I think he's got so much talent, and I don't really believe it was Gibbs kind of gave up. It was just because the financial commitment wasn't there from his sponsors. But Farmer Sage, Haley was one I expected from Cowlig. Cowlig also just had a very weird race. They were somewhat in it. I don't know if you can see Chester here, but he's waiting for food, so that's why he's making some noise there. But I will say that, and I'm curious who you guys picked to win the 500, because I just want to see how that race kind of paid out. I'm just going to feed the cat here so we can stop meowing during our talk here. It's always a hungry boy, my cat is. So, so I had picked Kyle Busch. I really kind of figured that it would be somebody that I didn't want to win the 500. And I've kind of gotten to the point now where I'm of the age. I've been watching racing for 19 years. And I say it's 19, but it's got to be. I watched since 2002, and it's 2002. So it's been 20 years now. So 20 years. And I had Kyle Busch. I kind of figured he would be the guy to beat. And I typically try to pick people I don't like, so I won't be so disappointed if they do win. But I mean, it was so hard this year. That was the one thing that typically you go like, oh, it's going to be this person's year. But really, it was a crapshoot this year. Like, we really had no idea who was really going to be the dominant car. Dave Sides, I had my eyes on RFK and Trackhouse. RFK, they did show up unexpectedly. Okay, great point. We are going to see a lot from them this year. I really hope you're right. We saw glimpses of it last year with Chris Buescher. I want to say it was Darlington, where he came out of nowhere and he led and won a stage, and it was not really expected. I was going to say, where was Hendrick in this entire race? Like, they had the wreck that took out Byron and Bowman, but Chase and Larson was up there for a little bit, but they didn't lead. They didn't really do much of anything in this race. So it's a very surprising miss for Hendrick Motorsports. And I took Tyler Reddick or Larson. Reddick was another one who I really thought the RCR cars were going to be so good, considering how good Austin Hill was in yesterday's Xfinity race. Davey Sides, I picked Hamlin. You can't really go wrong with Hamlin. And I'm not a Hamlin fan, but I kind of was thinking he's going to be the guy that's going to do this again. After last season losing the championship, I feel like he's out for blood this season. Always like to see Larson win, though. I would say, I'm not on the Larson train. It's been very difficult for me just to kind of get over everything that happened with him. But obviously, I'm trying. I'm not, I don't go out and hate what he does. He is one hell of a driver, and I really do hope he comes north and runs at Ohsweken Speedway for the Pinty Series this year. He'll be one person. I go in and see if there's a guy in the garage that could go on a Jimmy Johnson type championship run. It is Kyle Larson, and that's dangerous for the field. Very dangerous, because the consistency that he had last year You don't get that right off the bat. Not typically. So he'll be very, very, very good. Now, that might be why they saw this new car as an option, because they're like, oh shit, we don't want to see another, domination of 7 years by one team and one driver. I would agree that, that Hamlin will be probably out for blood to win the championship, or at least win races. I think a guy that might be the one that you need to look out for would be Tyler Reddick, though, as you mentioned earlier, Sage. He seems so close to being that guy. And RCR is a team that I do love. If you were to go back and see all of my kind of collection back behind me, the majority is RCR cars from Kevin Harvick. But Austin Dillon isn't going to be anything more than what he is. I think we've kind of seen he's been in this series long enough. There are drivers, however, that do hit their peak. They get the best they've ever been at 40. Obviously, Austin's got a ways to go, but I don't see that he's going to ever be more than what he is. So to me, what you're looking at is Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick shows consistently that he's getting better and better. He dropped a massive amount of weight this year too. I don't know if you guys saw him in the preseason, but I didn't even recognize him because he used to have a beard. He was a little bit, I wouldn't say he was fat or anything like that. I'm a fat guy, right? He's more of he was just a little bit of chub on him, but holy crap, man, he's good. He is so good. And I really think that that's the guy you're going to have to watch out for. A lot of people think that Reddick is going to be that guy. So yeah, I would say that he's somebody that you got to watch out for this season. And I was surprised actually that it was his car of all the cars to have a parts failure. Would never have expected that it would be like a Roush car. I would have thought it would have been like a Grala, the New York Racing or Rick Ware Racing, a smaller team that would have made it that had a mechanical failure. But hey, we'll take it. I mean, it just makes things a little bit. I'm a little bit behind on the comments here. So Fireman Sage, I think Chevrolet hasn't quite got a handle. I would agree. They don't have a handle on it yet. Again, behind the 8-ball. I'm a big dirt fan, and I've seen him come and race with our local guys. Kyle's done that before here. He's raced at Oshwegan quite a bit. I believe because he runs with Glenn Stiers. Stiers would be the guy to get him to come to Oshwegan and run for our series. So Sage, yeah, Ford definitely showing the advantage. Ford seems to do that. They seem to be the stinkers right up the way. Dave Sides, Bubba showed up tonight. I was pleasantly surprised by his performance. Dave Sides, I really thought they were just sandbagging, but they really struggled today. Yeah. Chevy wasn't the best today. They really just didn't seem to have it. And I really hope this shuts up some of the Bubba haters. I understand why people do. I don't understand why other people do. I think a lot of it does. I hate to say that it comes down to race, but there is a lot of people that think it has to do with race, and that's unfortunate. But what I thought today, guys, was I felt that Bubba, that relationship that he has with Freddie Kraft, I think it's showing to be very, very, very important. When Bubba first came into NASCAR, he was very, very erratic in his driving style on the plate races. Today, not even close to that. He was extremely mature behind the wheel, and he was, for a better term, he was calm. And Kyle Busch deserves a lot of credit. And I will go out and say that I was never the biggest Kyle Busch fan. But Kyle Busch pushed Wallace a lot today. Gave him consistent pushes, was behind him the entire race. Definitely a great start for 23XI. I think that Busch brother influence, because it will be from both of them. People seem to forget that he drove for Kyle Busch in the Truck Series. So he has that experience driving for Kyle, and now he's got his brother in the Toyota side of things and as his teammate. And that veteran leadership is what he has not had before. He didn't have a teammate at Richard Petty Motorsports, and he didn't have a teammate last year. He had teammates in the Toyota, like the Toyotas, but he never had somebody that he could go and lean on all the time that was part of his team, that would be his support. And to me, you saw it with Kurt Busch hanging out with Caitlyn Jenner over the weekend at the racetrack, and you're like, the Bushes don't care about what people will think. They're going to support whoever they feel like, and they'll support Bubba Wallace. Do I expect that he's going to have a amazing season? Probably not. I think it'll be better, but do I think he's going to go out and be a championship favorite? No. It's just, again, we have to remember, people need to remember that you have to be realistic on certain drivers. So like I said, Austin and Ty Dillon, they are where they are now. They're not at that point where they're going to be making huge strides unless their team gets fantastically better. I don't particularly see that. Bubba Wallace is kind of what he's going to be. He's a great plate racer. He's an awful road racer, and he will never probably be any good on road races. Let's be honest. He's not very good. Yeah, I agree with you, Sage. Unfortunately, it all stems back to that. And, there's been a lot worse. People didn't take it so bad with Larson's incident, but people really, really take an issue with him on that. So it shows that there's major issues with people still not understanding everything that goes into all of this. I think that it was really evident that they're going to try this year. That they had their 1 year under their belt. I like the partnership with him and Freddie Kraft. And the other one that he tends to be forgotten is Booty Barker. And Booty Barker has been around in NASCAR forever. And there's a guy who Booty Barker had to try and deal with and get him some victories. And that was Jason Leffler. Who does Jason Leffler remind me of? Well, in a way, he reminds me of Bubba Wallace, because they both drove a little erratic at some times. They were both opinionated and not afraid to speak their mind and would piss people off. So Booty Barker is somebody that they really, really actually, he's going to be a really big piece of this. Freddie Kraft, really, really big piece of this. And when you build consistency around a team, you need to have the same people in place to build. I think for years, and let's be honest, it is difficult to take a driver and have them go through 4 or 5 different teams in a short amount of time. And we have to remember the other thing too, is for the longest time, he had been worried about sponsorship for years. I remember him remember when he was starting that 43 car and they had, I can't remember what it was. And it didn't last very long on the 43. It was Click and Close Mortgages, I think it was. And they didn't hang around at all. Right. So he's finally in a place where he's got solid sponsorship. They've got sponsors coming to the car. He's got every tool there. He's won a race. No one can say that he hasn't, because he did. And today he ran clean. He didn't run a stupid race. You said right there, Sage, Booty's cut from the Larry Mack, Hamilton, Chad Knaus branch. He 100% is. He isn't really remembered as much, as sad as that is to say, but he is going to be critical in improving the 23 throughout the season. This is the year, however, that we're going to need to see something out of him. you can't just go off of a relationship. You have to provide results. And I think this was a great start. He can't let it get to his head. And I think that the mental game is so important in motorsports. It's so important for him. It's so important for the young drivers that come into this and feel that they need to be the best right off the start. And I'll say that there's a lot of people that has actually affected. So let's take Harrison Burton and Todd Gilliland. What is the worst thing that you can do to a young athlete is tell them how awesome they are all the time. Because when they struggle, they have no idea how to handle it. Case in point, you had Todd Gilliland and Harrison Burton that came from the K&N series where they won almost every race. They were out front all the time. And what happened when they got to the truck series? They struggled and they struggled and they struggled. Well, if you constantly are you're not experiencing any sort of struggle in your developmental career, all of a sudden you get to a good spot where you're in a great team, and then all of a sudden you're not succeeding. And then the mental game starts to take over. So I really hope that this year that they take that step and realize, hey, there is going to be a massive amount of pressure on the 23 team this year. Massive amount. So he can't let the disappointment from this race take over. And a great point, like you said, Sage, is exactly 23 bringing in Curtis, good move. It'll be a great mentor for him, and he knows he doesn't sugarcoat things. Kurt Busch has a career that I don't think many of us thought he would have, because he came into this series, he was okay. 2002, he started to get really good. Then he got a little mouthy. Then he continued to get a little mouthy. Then he made some stupid mistakes. Then he had some personal issues. Then he lost his ride. Then he lost his ride again. Then he went to a crappy ride. Then he got to a better ride. And then he's back and he's got a sponsor that absolutely loves him. He's now driving for the best player in the NBA in history. Now, all of a sudden, his career, he's turned it around and he's still winning. The stuff with Jimmy Spencer, Sage, was legendary. Legendary. I was talking about this the other day about his quote about how Jimmy Spencer was a never been. You can't even really call him a has been because he was a never been. Him saying that he was going to punch out, I think it was Bob Pockris actually, that he was saying he was going to punch him in the face or something. Like he was doing some really bad stuff. He got a DUI. He lost his championship ride. So he was a hothead. And so if there's a guy that can help take Bubba Wallace away from being so emotional, that would be the guy to do it. Because Kurt Busch, I mean, if they'd interviewed him after that LA Coliseum event when he was a rookie, he would have lit that mic on fire with his words. But he was just kind of, shit happens. And that's basically all he said. It's not like Kurt Busch. And I mean, you see it when drivers start to mature, they figure it out. I think Bubba he's still got time. He's 28. As we've said, there are drivers like Denny Hamlin, like Kevin Harvick, that it takes them until their late 30s, early 40s to get it. Martin Truex, same thing, to get it. And then all of a sudden, it's like a light switch and they are on it and they win. It's what happens. It takes time for some of those drivers to make it through. Obviously, the 500 is a different story. We said it's plate racing. The real test begins next week because it is a full schedule of road courses where we know he is crap on road courses. I don't know about away from emotional, but more to teach him how to deal with them so he doesn't make the same mistakes. Exactly. Kurt's done it. He makes mistakes, and he's done a lot of them. It's that mental aspect and also learning how to make his car better. I think one of the things that we can definitely find is it's so easy to have a great car and then the next week you have a shit car and then you are just, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything with this. Go back onto YouTube and type yourself some fun stuff. Okay. Do yourselves a favor and watch. I want to say it's Kurt Busch Rageaholic and Kyle Busch Rageaholic, and you will listen to how Kurt Busch is on the mic. Absolutely insane. Some of the stuff that Kurt Busch used to say on the microphone, you can't repeat. It's hilarious, but it's something about you've got to put that aside and you've got to be able to look forward. And I think the best situation is to have a teammate out there that knows the same things that you're going through. Davey, do you think Fox has made an improvement on the broadcast this year? Absolutely not. Awful. Horrible, 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 horrible. One of the worst broadcasts of a 500 I can remember. Now, Tony Stewart, positive. Clint, take him or leave him. The change in the graphic for the current running order, positive. Having them on the side, negative. Using cartoon or comic style again instead of real photos, negative. Having awful camera work, major negative. And the commercial breaks is the biggest negative throughout the entire thing. I think Fox really, really shit the bed on this one, like they did all week. They need to NASCAR needs to step in essentially. Like this is where it comes, is that they have the broadcast rights, but NASCAR themselves are the ones that are putting out the product. So this is what needs to happen. When they come up to their new agreement, they have to say, hey, listen, you're going to cover this much or we walk. Now, do I think that NASCAR needs to go to a cable network anymore? Hard to say. I mean, obviously, stick and ball sports dominate the cable networks as it is. But the way that we are going is that people want everything right now. They don't want to wait and they don't want to be interrupted. That's the biggest thing about it. That's the biggest thing. I don't want to watch a race and be interrupted 70 times for fucking commercials that I watched 5 minutes ago. I don't want to see that. You don't. You're a race fan for a reason. You want to watch a race, not commercials. I must boogie. I think Tone did great and Boyer's there to party. Boyer is Boyer's very hit and miss for me. I liked him last year. I thought he brought some interest, but he's just I feel he jibber jabbers too much, and he just needs to focus on the content and get that excitement on the stuff on the track. I think it'll be very interesting because we need to see who he's going to benefit the most of being in the booth with. I don't necessarily think Matt Kenseth is that guy. I have no idea why they're going with Matt Kenseth in the booth. Matt is not a fireball of energy at all. Now, he's been away from racing for a little bit, so he might surprise us. Danica Patrick did an admirable job last year with SRX, but again, I don't see that that's a very successful pairing. Clint needs to be with somebody that's going to match him. And I don't know who that's going to be. I think that I'll be honest with you guys, Larry Mack, he fit perfectly in that booth. He fit perfectly. He could do all the technical stuff so that they could talk about that. He talked about the pit stops. He was great. He worked well with Clint, and of course he works well with Mike. But to me, I just don't see that this booth really works. And it might just be that you've got old school with Mike and you've got new school with Clint. They just seem too different. I don't know how to say it. It's different when you've got somebody that's a legend like Mike Joy and Clint Boyer, who to me, he's not a legend. Like Clint's a nice driver and all that, but Clint is not a legend. He isn't. I mean, he's not a Hall of Famer. He was a driver that was in the series for a good bit, but never really did much aside from his Busch Series championship. He had a very good feud with Jeff Gordon. But to me, I don't really think that Fox is going to be the people that are going to be taking NASCAR to the next step. Yes. Thank you, Sage. Yeah, it is. It's more of a clash than a meshing. And it's like Jeff Gordon last year. It was like when Jeff and DW were in the booth. They don't work well together. And I think Fox's biggest mistake was not having Dale Jr. Like, to me, I remember Matt Yoakum used to be on both Fox and NBC TNT. And I would make a deal if I was NASCAR to get Dale Jr. on both broadcasts. Honestly, I know that it'll never happen because of the way that networks are, but I would not be opposed to Dale Jr. being on both shows. I think you have Dale Jr. in there with Mike Joy and Larry Mack, and that is an all-star booth. I think you keep him in NBC with definitely not Jeff Burton. And I'd say maybe you keep Steve Letarte in there, or you put in somebody new like Parker Kligerman. I think Parker is a very good talker. I wouldn't put Rick Allen. I would get Alan Bestwick back. Like, that would be my end all love all. Like, really, that would be it. It's about selling the sport, and Clint sells it like it's a joke. And I felt like this the last time that we talked about this. Fox a lot of the times treats the broadcast like it is a joke. It treats the show like it's not a serious sport. And you go and you watch Formula One, they treat everything like it's huge. And they don't do that here. And that's embarrassing. Absolutely love his podcast. Junior's podcast is Junior, and I'll say both the podcasts that I listen to are Dale Jr., the Dale Jr. download, and Door Bumper Clear. I think both of them are fantastic. I think that Door Bumper Clear is a little more goofy, which you need. I don't necessarily like all the personalities in terms of what their views are on things, but in terms of entertainment, absolutely. Both of them, fantastic. The episode with Boris Said that's just been released is extremely good. Definitely recommend that you guys listen to that one. Big fan of Boris Said. So, yeah, I definitely am a big fan. And you could definitely, learn a lot. I had no idea that he was such good friends with Boris Said. It's what we need. The reason why we have this channel is so that in Canada we can talk about motorsports and showcase our Canadian talent, the NASCAR Penny Series, because one of the things that we're in danger for, especially here in Ontario, is we don't have a lot of tracks left, and motorsports is so close from death. It is so close, and we have to keep it going. And that is the reality of it. It is the only sport that is so reliant on sponsorship to keep the teams coming, to keep people in there. And the tracks especially need that revenue to keep the sport alive. And in Canada, we really don't have a lot of support from the government. We don't have support really at all. And we need those corporate companies to come in and, we do what we want to, we do what we can, not we want. We do what we're trying to do to make things happen. And, anytime we can get people to come in and just to be part of the conversation is exciting. I love talking about motorsports with people. As a Canadian, it's not something I really get to do because a lot of people in Canada would much rather talk about hockey. basketball, anything not racing related. Most people always think that NASCAR is an American thing, but I mean, my place would not be covered in diecast right now if it wasn't a thing for everybody. So yeah, for sure. It's you know what? I appreciate that, Brent. Yeah, thank you for coming on and chatting with me. It is always a blast, really. I look forward to doing this, and definitely. Before you go, Brent, though, I definitely want to hear your rating. So give me an A, B, C, D, D, C, like a school rating, we'll say, or a report card rating for the Daytona 500. I'm just curious as to what you would rate it. I'm going to give this an A. I thought it was very solid all the way through. But a lot of new, interesting storylines, very fun. Broadcast is what brings it down from an A+ for me. So definitely I want to hear people's ratings for it because it was different. It's something that we can take away and be very impressed with. Hopefully California turns out to be a good race. All the talk that they were going to turn it into a short track, and now that apparently might not be happening. So we have to look at that as an option as well, that California may not end up becoming a short track. And we're still going to have to fight for short tracks. I'm still of the belief that the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series do not need to go to Canada, or sorry, to Canada, to Daytona. What can motorsports do to get more interest and revenue without sponsors? They really can't. I'll be honest with you, Fireman Sage, I think it's streaming. If you want to get people to be paying attention, you got to have something with no commercials. You got to have content all the time, nonstop. And I've said this before, WWE, wrestling is something that I'm a big fan of. And they created the WWE Network, and you got basically every pay-per-view, every program that they've ever created, every pay-per-view from history. And you get it for a base price of $9.99. You get all the upcoming stuff included in that price. Well, if I'm NASCAR, I'm creating some sort of service just like that. Free of commercials, all previous NASCAR broadcasts, all previous programming, original programming, weekly, daily content from across the NASCAR world. Not only Cup Series, but Pinty's, Wheel and Modifieds, Euro, Mexico. Have it all on one platform with every option out there. You have a base price. I mean, NASCAR would probably not want it to be like $11 a month or something. It would probably have to be like 25 or something. But $25 a month, and you get every program, you get every past race, you get everything. That's what is going to attract people to it. Now, in terms of getting people to go to the races, that is a harder sell. What needs to happen, in my opinion, is they need to go to the short tracks, just like Dale Jr. has said, and they need to pack the shit out of those short tracks. I would much rather go to a short track. Now, Daytona is different. Obviously, this week they sold out, which is fantastic. More or less, I think a ton of people were going down south because they wanted to get away from the hellhole of cold that is Canada right now. But add in a couple to, I would say 3 to 5 new short tracks and get rid of some of the old ones. Well, that's exactly it, because Davey's point here is a good one, and I'm going to touch on it actually. Is the hardest point about getting the sports later is actually watching sports. Attention spans are the problem, Davey. People don't have them. People don't have time, for the first part, to watch a 4-hour race, and they don't have the patience to watch a 4-hour race. Now, if you add in every 5 minutes another 10 minutes of commercials, well, what's the point? I could just go watch Netflix or Amazon Prime or Crave or whatever, Disney Plus, and go watch an entire season of a TV show in that time span. That's the problem, man, is it has to be streaming. So you're saying not attention span, but getting access to the broadcast like races and FS1 should not be a thing. It's true. It shouldn't be a thing. The problem is that they're not on the mainstream channels because they weren't getting enough viewership. So now their decision was to put on FS1. Same with NBC when they're putting stuff on Peacock, right? Well, it's on our streamings. You should be able to get that. Well, okay, perfect example. We in Canada can't get Peacock. So how are we supposed to do that? Right? It's going to be an uphill battle. Very much so. They've got to come up with, like I said, if they have a streaming service, then you just sign up on NASCAR.com. There you go. Boom. Or if they were to sign up and get with a Netflix or an Amazon or something and have live streaming on one of those platforms, easy peasy. The problem is that cable is not reliable and cable is dying. Cable is a dying thing. It is, people don't want to spend, and I'm one of those people. I don't want to spend, and this is a real bill, okay, for me in Canada. If I want to get the channels to watch the racing, okay, I have no other channels except for the Extreme Basic, which is like 25 channels of cable, and a special, which is Fox Sports Racing, that I have to special order for another $12 because it doesn't come on any TV package. If I wanted to get that, my bill is still over $100 just to watch cable channels. $100. Ridiculous. When you have unlimited internet being everything now, it's included in everything. People are always on their phones. It's another main reason why cable is not a good idea. You have to have streaming options. It is ridiculous. Streaming options is the future. It is the way things are going to be. Hell, they partner with YouTube and have all the races on YouTube. Are you kidding? Do you know how popular that would make it? It's not hard because everybody knows how to get YouTube. You go to youtube.com, done. It's not the first time I've heard that, Davey. I've heard that a lot, that people end up listening to MRM because they're so fed up with the cable. Now, for me, I'm one of those people, I could, if I wanted to, stream it, find an illegal stream or whatever, and watch it on my laptop. I'm not that type. I didn't spend all the money on a giant TV to watch it on a little bitty screen. Now I could do all the hookups and all that stuff, but then there's buffering issues and all that type of stuff. So, you know, I want to see a little bit more. Now, for me, I said that, we said this the other day, and Graydon and I were talking about this, and we said the Daytona 500 needs to be special. And maybe why they're starting to change the Martinsville race to 400 laps, and maybe they'll consider starting to lower other race distances, is to make the 500 feel like it's the longest race of the season. It is the biggest race of the season. And I don't want to see the ARCA series ever again on Daytona or Talladega. It doesn't belong there. The racing is shit every time they come there. And that was no different this year. The Xfinity series and the Truck series both had over the allotted amount of cars. So send those two series to a short track for the first race of the season, where they can have heat races and they can have LCQs to get people into the race, instead of having people fight for it in qualifying, where again, it's all about money because of who's able to transfer owner points. That's where it comes down to. Make it about the race. Give us the old school feeling. And I will tell you, if they were to do that with the Xfinity or the Truck series, especially with the Xfinity series nowadays, you are going to get a sellout every time. because people like short track racing. They love the Xfinity series. Those are the future stars. Give the Cup Series the big ass boring tracks that they need to, because they're the headliners, but no more companion events. They outreached the companion events with Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. It took away their identity. It's what made them fun to watch in the first place. But if you just copy what the Cup Series does, then all you're making is another Cup Series. Uniqueness, it's what we need. I think heat races and LCQ is where it's at, but the sponsors want their car in the show. Here's the difference, though, Sage. If you have the opportunity to have your car in a heat race, then it races with that sponsor on it. Those cars that failed to make the race at Daytona didn't get to race at all. There's the difference. At least you're getting your car in a race. All those guys got to do was practice and have one lap for qualifying. If I'm a sponsor, okay, no way in hell am I happy that I just got to see my car practice and qualify and not get to race. So give them that opportunity, because then it's equal playing field. You really want to make things equal for everybody, you go to the short tracks, because there it's not all about who has the best car. It's about who can wheel that car around a short track. We've seen it. We have seen it work. You want to put that money back into those short tracks. That's what they need to do. As much as they liked that big Goliath of speedways that they had, the problem is all those itty bitty small short tracks were losing all of their loyal fans because they were going to the big tracks, killing all the smaller tracks. Now those little tracks have nobody running them. So then there's nobody coming up, bringing those sponsors from the lower grassroots divisions up to Trucks and Xfinity, then up to Cup Series. We basically have nothing in that chain. So building that ladder system, just like what you see in the IndyCar series, is what they need to do. Give opportunities for people to be seen. You can't see a lot of these people now. You can't see a lot of the Pindy series. The Pindy series is a tape delay, or it's live on the TSN app. It's not broadcast, or I guess Mav TV. I don't know if it's live there. Wheel and Modifieds, we can't see it live. Showcase things for everybody. Now, what I think is, obviously they've got Flow Racing now, which is going to be the new home for the grassroots racing for NASCAR, which is a plus because it is a subscription service, so people can buy it and then see it. Again, tough deal that you got to shell out some money, but again, I think it's the wrong way. NASCAR is doing things so that the smallest form of racing, the least expensive, is the one you've got to pay for. So all these series, the ARCAs, the Pinty series, the Wheel Modifieds, the series that need the most in terms of sponsorship help, that need the most in terms of revenue and ratings, you're going to have to make people pay to see it. Does that make any sense? In reality, you'd think it'd be the other way around, where you got to pay and see the Cup stuff. As much as people will bitch and complain, they'll still watch it. They'll pay whatever they have to watch it. It's a tough deal all the way around, because you can't win. I mean, we saw that on the Coliseum. Exactly. The Coliseum, as much as people like to bitch about that, 156% upwards, that's pretty good. There's no way in hell that the Busch Clash at Daytona was ever going to get that. No way. And in terms of like pointless races, the Busch Clash is the most pointless one there is. Well, I guess you could say that the All-Star race is pretty pointless too, but you know, as we talk about the stuff that they've got to do, they've got a lot of work still. Some things they got to consider. Bring back the Pit Crew Challenge. Bring back the Engine Building Challenge. Bring back weekly programming. They used to have NASCAR Classics where they'd showcase old races. Do they do delays like where you can't see it live? so those smaller tracks can get the income from butts in the seats. Not really. Jeremy C, I'm brand new to NASCAR. See, there we go. The Coliseum brought me into it. Jeremy, I'm glad to hear that. Jeremy, I'm just curious where you're from, where you're located, because I'm very curious to see who and what area of the world you were brought in to NASCAR from. And the one thing I think it's very critical is that NASCAR needs to get away from the stereotype that it lived with for years. The Southern redneck, racist, homophobic, anti-whatever type of sport it had. It did. And we can't go out and say that it doesn't. It did. And there's still a lot of it that it does. But it needs to get away from that. It needs minorities. It needs multi-gender. It needs all sorts of sponsorship. I think you've got a lot of the old kind of crew still trying to keep it that way, Fireman Sage, but I think that the younger crowd is not up for that anymore. We're done with this. They're done with the racist. They're done with the homophobic. It's for everybody. And NASCAR, I applaud them for doing what they've done. It's ballsy. It is, because that you can alienate. They say that they'll alienate people even more. I would disagree. I think they're starting to approach this very differently. They've got new people in charge. They're bringing new people in. I think that you're going to see even more change in the future. And I'm so happy to see the Xfinity Series with Jesse Iwuji having a team and Pitbull coming in and Floyd Mayweather and Michael Jordan. And holy crap, amazing. See, Mississippi, there you go. I love that. And Jeremy, if you don't mind me asking, did you know of NASCAR previously, or just not ever any interest? Because I'm very curious about this, because I think it's so cool. First off, welcome. We are so glad to have new fans, and that's the one thing that is also part of the change. Is I think a lot of older, maybe not the most supportive people out there would say, no, it was fine the way it was, and we don't need people, and we were, they should be helping. They should be trying to get us happy, and that's just not the way it goes. Like the reality is we need people that are coming in that are fresh faced, the ones that have companies and know companies that would be interested in coming in. And I mean, the NASCAR jackets, man, those are hip, those are cool. Like, those are things that people were sporting. They've got influencers wearing them, and bringing celebrities and streaming, and you've got NASCAR TikToks, and you've got YouTube channels. I mean, it's what needs to happen. Drag and Daytona, I think, are the only tracks that, yeah, it's true. And I'm not saying that Fireman Sage, that we have to ditch the Southern roots. Absolutely not. It's the stuff that kind of comes with it, which I think is so far from reality now. I mean, I think, there's a large majority of people that would love to see more minorities in racing. I would love to see more minorities. I'd love to see some female competitors in there on a regular basis. And it's hard because, again, sponsorship, it just isn't there yet. But the way that things are going is very positive. I think the 500, I'm very curious to see what the ratings are going to be, because it was sold out. Whether or not starting at 2:00, 3:00 is the best decision still. I'm not really on board with it. Didn't really care for it, but I kept seeing the commercial over and over. The Coliseum, and decided to watch it and loved it. Watched the whole race today and ready for the next one. I'll rate. Oh my God, dude, that's awesome. I love that. So cool. Oh, right on, man. That is really bad. I like that. That's an awesome story. Still lots more things we're trying to figure out. You know what, man? Take your time. You don't have to figure it all out at once. Believe me, I've been watching it for 20 years and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'd say I'm a very different NASCAR fan than a lot of people. I'm a Canadian, right? In Toronto, Ontario. So not the typical, as you would think, race fan, but the one thing is I love racing. It isn't a normal week, man. This you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it, man. But I'm telling you, man, I will say you need to experience an actual race live too. TV, as much as what it is, does not do justice. TV is not like being at the race itself, man. I tell you, we went to 6, I think, Pinty's races last year, and I am dying to go to another race right now. Like, I love the racing on TV, man. I need to be there. The noise, the smells, the sounds, the sights. It is the best thing about our sport is being there. It is so good. The people are amazing. You go to your local short track, man. And Sage, I'll tell you, you probably know from your experience being around being a race fan, the people are great. And if you go to a local short track, there's some of the stuff that you get to do. Some of these racetracks, you get autographs from drivers. You get pictures. Sometimes they let the kids in the car and kind of take a picture in there. It's a way different experience than NASCAR. NASCAR is the highest level, right? So it's a lot more corporate if you take away of kind of how they run things. But local short tracks, man, they're where you start out, man. And then I tell you, car racing is just the coolest. Strung Out Kid, nice to see you there, man, my friend. I haven't seen you for a while, so I was surprised how well the cars took damage. They did. That roll I was mentioning earlier in the show here, that roll that Harrison Burton had didn't look like it really damaged his car at all. At least the integrity of the car was not compromised, which I really appreciate. Yeah, honestly, man, Jeremy, do it. Go to a race. Now you're in Mississippi, man, so you got to go to Dega. Talladega is, again, it depends. Like I said, if it's plate racing is plate racing, so you got to figure out what your niche is, right? There's road racing, there's the plate racing, and then of course short tracks. Now, I'm always a big fan of the short tracks. I think you saw the Coliseum. That's your best bet. You go to quarter mile and go watch some cars run around, man. And that shit is amazing. It's so, like I said, I'm in Canada, man. We got to wait till May before the race season starts here. So it's absolutely brutal here. And we've had COVID, like I said, we've been in restrictions for like 2 years as well, right? So we're finally starting to come out of that stuff now. So we're finally getting ready to get out there, right? So definitely do it. Yeah, there you go. Like I said, when you go to like I said, right there, nationals, something like that, where you get a ton of cars to show up, dude, it is the best. It is the best time, I mean, if you're a partier, typically the infields get a little rowdy and, people get some beverages in them. I mean, some racetracks, they don't have that, but, I said, I would show you kind of my place here is kind of littered with memorabilia, and it's just kind of what you do, right? Like it's what you do, man. If you're a race fan, you kind of do whatever you can to be a race fan. It gets you so much, and you get you hyped, and you can find a great pocket of people. That's what I was lucky enough to do. I'll tell you, man, I didn't know anybody in racing a couple years ago, and I got really into it. Now we have a podcast. I run the Facebook group for the Penny series, breaking news for the Penny series, do fictional cars for people, do mock-ups for people. If you get involved, man, this community will friggin' love you. You just get in there, get involved. you can forget some of the crazy ones because there'll be some of those guys out there. But listen, man, racing gives a lot back. So you definitely can go out and do that. It's I'm literally counting down the days till I'm going to be able to do that again. And we've been going on here for an hour and 32 minutes, guys. So I want to thank the consistent people that have been hanging out in here. Sage, I think you've been hanging out here the longest, and I really appreciate you and Brent, and we're seeing a Penny series. Any clips on Pinty's series? Is that the one you're thinking of? Pinty series is our series, so that's the. There is plenty of clips on YouTube. There's full races actually on there, so definitely check it out. The Ottoman Empire is on that. There you go, buddy. Graphic designers, dude, definitely do it. Definitely. The racing community loves graphic designers. It is pretty full. There's a lot of people out there, but it's something that, listen, if you want to get involved, teams need that. Teams need help. Let's be honest. They'll do anything that they can because they can't afford a lot of the times to, and I'm not talking like NASCAR higher ups. Like higher ups, it's hard to get in there right off the bat. But the small teams, the local guys, that's your bread and butter, man. Because you get in there and they will love you. I mean, I'm telling you, man, I work for a race series right now doing their social media stuff. And we have a couple people that have helped me out with graphics, and you help keep racing series. Lots of locals, tons of local people, because they literally can't afford to get somebody to do the graphics for them. So if you can help with anything from hero cards is a big one, designing hero cards, designing paint schemes, designing Facebook pages or websites, that type of stuff, the local series people need that help. They need it. That's why we run this channel right now. It's because we're giving exposure to our smaller series, our smaller racers. They need that. And the big companies typically charge. We don't need to do that. On this channel, we're just race fans. I have no background in journalism at all. Graydon has no background at all in journalism. He's a heavy equipment operator. I am an intellectual property law clerk, but we're really big race fans. The Stickers and Scuffs name came from, I work out on Bay Street in the financial district, and Graydon is in the backwoods plowing roads with his grader or his tractor. You could not get me in a million years to do that. Fireman Sage, I really appreciate that. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. We also have a Facebook page, and we're on all social media. You can find us there. No way. See? Building fiberglass boats. You know what would be really good is a fiberglass boat company sponsoring a race car. Stuff like that, man. Connections. Fiberglass companies, race cars. Perfect combination. Your supplier, man. Whoever helps you with the fiberglass. That's somebody that you go out and get, right? I love. Oops. Sorry, I just turned my TikTok on. I love racing, and I love the community. I love that we're able to do this. This is the best part. It is. It's the most fun that I have during the race weekends, is being able to talk. So yeah, Jeremy, we don't always, but you've probably seen, if you go through our subscriber or through our videos, we cover our Canadian racing series and actually some of the Southern series. We have had a couple of people. We had Ray Evernham actually on our show a couple of weeks ago, which is the coolest. We actually have Brian Murphy from Stewart Haas Racing's Cup Series. He's their shop foreman. He'll be on our show tomorrow, or on Tuesday. Sorry, that we'll release that episode on Tuesday. Live is kind of hit and miss. It just depends on availability. Both Graydon and I work. So, and then Olivia, who is our newest co-host, she's a student, so she's not always as available either. She's also out in Alberta, so she the time difference there. But yeah, we definitely, they did my dad's Camaro through my page. Perfect. There you go, man. That's excellent. Yeah, so I guess that's why we do this, right? It's not for subscribers, it's for friends. Like, that's what it is, man. I tell you, man, the the racing community is some of the coolest people I've ever met. And it's only been 1 year that I've been in the racing community since we really started this podcast. Graydon and I met via Twitter. That's how this whole thing started. Because of the pandemic, we met, we chatted about racing, we started a podcast together, and I go out and say, he is my fucking best friend. I didn't even meet him until last May for our first Pinty's race. We did almost a full year of the podcast without ever meeting. I think it was 6 months of the podcast we did before we actually ever met. And it was racing that brought us together. Two guys from completely different backgrounds. And it was motorsports, man. Our love of motorsports. He's got 2 young sons. I said, we'll bring them in. Well, yep, we're on Spotify, Sage. We're on every platform, essentially. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Zip, Boom, Crack, whatever the other ones there are. But yeah, so that's kind of how we put this all together. And it like I said, I don't have a background in doing podcasts. I took radio broadcasting in high school. I loved it. And I've always wanted to talk motorsports, and we get to do it now. And it's the most fun, man. It really is. And getting to chat with people like you guys, it's so much fun. I live for this type of stuff. It is because it's something I get to talk about that I absolutely love. And it's motorsports. I mean, you probably can't see because the lighting in my condo is not really good, but I got a big Terry Labonte blanket right above my shoulder here. And right beside it is a cabinet full of NASCAR memorabilia. There's another cabinet over there that's full of NASCAR memorabilia. Then I have a pop vinyl shelf full. My desk is full of diecast cars. There's 2 other diecast shelves right over here. All my walls are covered in either diecast cars or hero cards. And then I have a Pinty Series tire and fender and Trevor Bain's fender, or his door, from one of his Busch Series or his Nationwide cars right in front of me. And then 2 autographed AJ Allmendinger cards and a Terry Labonte signed card. So yeah, dude, that's what we hear a lot is people say they'll listen to it when when they're at work. And then I had this as well. This is a Kevin Harvick signed hero card that we used for that. And for the life of me, I don't actually know if it's Kevin Harvick's signature, but I'm gonna believe that it is. But so yeah, it's what we do, man. We absolutely love it, and we love that people are coming into this sport, and we're gonna continue doing what we can. Dinger's, dude, I met him at the Grand Prix of Toronto for the the Champ Car Series when he was driving for the Indec team and for the Forsyths Indec team, and he got him to sign his shirt. And actually, the reason why I got those is it's a kind of a small world, is that his ex-wife was the cousin of my aunt and uncle's friend, I believe. So that's how I got those, was from him. And so he is like the nicest, coolest guy ever. And if I had to compare, I met Paul Tracy, and Paul Tracy was my hero growing up, and Paul Tracy's not the nicest guy when you meet him. Dinger, 100% cool guy, really, really cool guy. So yeah, there's been some drivers been lucky enough to meet with. I met Reed Sorensen in 2007. Nobody was in his line when we went to Richmond to watch the race, and so I got a picture with him, and was lucky enough to meet there's somebody here that does karaoke and their microphone is way off. So all I can hear is feedback over there. So yeah, I was lucky enough to meet them, and we've met all sorts of Pinty Series drivers and IndyCar drivers. Santino Ferrucci was a cool guy. I thought he was really, really nice. And Robert Wickens was just the coolest guy ever. And so we've been lucky to chat with some drivers, and you'll find them on the podcast here. Mostly a lot of Canadian guys that you'll see. But we have had some other guys that run in the Xfinity series, like Josh Williams, Ryan Vargas, we just had on the show again. Like I said, Ray Evernham was on the show. We have Brian Murphy that's going to be on. We've had Alex LeBay and Mason Massey on the show. Preston Pardis, basically a lot of guys from DGM Racing. Rafael Lessard has been on the show. Alex Tagliani, DJ Kennington. So a lot of Canadian guys you'll see on our show. But you know what, guys? I'm going to wrap it up. I've had an absolute blast chatting with all of you guys tonight. This was a lot of fun. And you know what? We can definitely do this again. California is next week. I'm not sure on the schedule for live streaming, what that's going to look like just yet. California, again, is typically hit and miss in my book of if it's a good race or not. So normally what you can find, if it's a truck series race, Xfinity and Cup, I like to talk about the Xfinity series a lot because I love that series, but the Cup series as well is something that I'll be very interested in this season. So definitely, guys, keep it tuned to the Stickers and Scuffs podcast. Again, we are on all platforms. You can find me at CamK Racing on Twitter and Instagram. Also on Facebook. We have a Facebook group there. Just look up Stickers and Scuffs. Same with that on Instagram. We're working on a TikTok. We also have a website, stickersandscuffs at Weebly.com or .Weebly. You know, I think it's at Weebly.com. And yeah, guys, I really appreciate it. All of you guys, this was a lot of fun, and we gotta go rest my throat. We have a holiday here tomorrow in Ontario, Canada, so I'm gonna experience that. And you guys, seriously, absolutely had a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. You guys enjoy. Have a great night. We will chat with you all next week. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. We'd love to chat with you guys. Okay. Have yourselves a great night, everybody. From Toronto, Ontario, Canada. This is Cam K, and I'm going to be signing off.